Hey, good evening, Guam. Welcome to the after party, KUAM News D18. We'll introduce our panelists. First of all, my co-host here, SABRINA MATANANE. And from the Guam Young Professionals, we have Attorney Mars Johnson. From the Grand Old Party, Mr. Juan Carlos Benitez.
Half a day.
And a special guest tonight, former Senator Nerissa Underwood. Good evening.
Half a day.
We had a couple incumbents on, and I feel like both of them stand a good chance of getting reelected.
Freshman incumbents, I think they did a really good job tonight.
Well, I used to give Louise a hard time because her platform was that she was against cancer, which is kind of a no-brainer. But I really feel like I almost had to stop myself from laughing when Nestor said, "Let's talk about a bill from your term."
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if she passed any other bills other than what a bill it was, right?
What did she call it?
Homegrown cultivation.
Mm-hmm. No, home run.
She said it
bills.
very, very humbly that it was a home run, a hard home run to hit. And you know, the timing was great. I mean, end of the term. I mean, she's definitely finishing her term on a high note, pun intended.
And Talina, she got her bill passed and enacted into law with illegalizing casino gambling at the carnival.
Right.
You said it was a tough time, but you know, she got it passed. I really would have wanted to have asked her though, why not go after game rooms and ban gambling there? And you know, somebody actually had asked that on Facebook. We just didn't get a chance to ask that.
I always found that interesting that we come down so hard on casino gambling yet turn a blind eye to the game rooms, which are real hotspots for crime and drugs. I did a ride along with the cops, and they were like, "Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff happens at these game rooms, yet you don't hear any of the senators." And I'm pretty sure there's some ulterior political reason, like maybe people who own the game rooms donate to the campaigns or something crazy like that.
Who knows?
Who knows?
How do you think the candidates did?
I think they both did great. They very strong issues on both sides. I actually was a big advocate against banning the casino from the carnival, and so I'm very happy that happened. I'm also very much concerned about drug interdiction, which I think in prior meetings that we've had, I've been very consistent on my position.
Right.
It is a great win if you're going to have a bill passed. As a Republican running, our candidate.
Yeah, the governor's like, "Hey, Louise, come on down. We'll sign that right away."
Yeah. So
roll out the green carpet for you.
Yeah. So I think they both did very well, and nothing negative comment about either of them. I think they did awesome.
What do you think, Mars?
No, I think they both did really well too, though. I did like what Talina was saying towards the end of hers as well, though, about the importance to try to provide more services for people who are facing addiction on Guam, because I think that's really the most important thing we need to address. I think I disagree with her on the homegrown cannabis issue, though, because I really don't think that's a big issue at all. In fact, I'm all in favor of legalization of that. I came back from Minnesota. I was there earlier this year. I talked to a U.S. attorney who was out there. I talked to an county attorney out there, too. And they were all talking about how their main issues right now are dealing with the heroin epidemic and with methamphetamines. Even methamphetamines they weren't too worried about. They're more worried about the things that are killing people on a daily basis, though. And so I really like that concept of going after issues with addiction, though, because it's things like heroin. The heroin epidemic hasn't really reached Guam at least quite as much, I don't think.
Right.
Right now we're still dealing with amphetamines. But I think we really need to address that issue before it becomes an even bigger problem than it already is.
And you're right, in dealing with addiction here on Guam, you don't have enough facilities to treat addiction. I mean, that's one of the things I heard going through the FBI Citizens Academy. Not only you have to stop the drugs from coming in, which Talina pointed out, it's just when they are here and people are addicted, there's not enough treatment facilities. So,
Right. Yeah.
Well,
how do you solve the problem? And then DOC, we all saw what happened there.
Well, it takes, I think they keep saying that it takes a village to deal with the situation, but it's a real tough issue. This has really hit home for me because one of my children had really gotten into meth. Way back, I didn't even know, when he was 17 years old. And so it's a lifetime of struggle. And here in Guam, he's not here in Guam, but they have a lot of services where they are living right now in Victoria, British Columbia. But here in Guam, they don't have, what we don't have is the residential, where they can go in, provide support for the drug addict, and then bring in the family so that towards the end, so that as they get rehabilitated, they don't go back to the same environment. The whole family is treated, because you're finding a new person coming out, and then everyone else will have to make adjustments. So I think that we're just treating the symptoms like they're, they do have that. I think it's by the Salvation Army, where they can go in for
Lighthouse.
Yeah, the Lighthouse, but I'm just not sure that it is as extensive.
Yeah.
But we have to address that, and it would require not only the government, but also the churches, the families to embrace that person, that family member who is afflicted. It's a disease.
Yeah.
And it's not something that we can just prescribe, that they just go for counseling all by themselves, for example.
Have we seen anybody? Oh, God.
For me, one of the things, and I'll take my hat off for Governor Cabo and Lieutenant Governor Ray Tenorio, is the first step is actually asking for the high-intensity drug trafficking area designation.
Which was a crazy move, because I feel like when you ask for that designation as a high-intensity drug trafficking area, you're also, in some ways, I mean, if you're out there touting how sincere you are and how much you care about public safety, it's almost an admission that you failed in some ways.
It's not an admission that you failed. It's an admission of an existing problem that has gone for many years unattended.
Right.
There's been a pushback for a long time by the tourism industry to not highlight the fact that there was a drug problem in Guam,
Right, yeah.
because we're a tourism destination. I was involved in the designation of the HIDA for Guam, for Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. And I kept saying it didn't affect at all. The U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, all of them are HIDAs. It's just because of location. You're a border entry point, easy access into the mainland U.S., and we're transit location. Main drugs don't stay here. They keep going into the mainland of the United States. But the problem becomes worse as those people involved in the traffic stop being paid in money and start being paid in drugs. And then they start distributing those drugs in our community.
Well, I feel like in the 90s, we had this war on ice, and here it is. I mean, gosh, like 30 plus years later, and we still haven't won the war. I mean, I don't want to get into the war on drugs. I know it's a failed effort, but I'm just saying maybe there's no real incentive for us to do more. I mean, it's crazy. 30 plus years. I mean, we've all had family members. I've had close
we've got to
family
have
members,
incentive when we see all the crimes that are being committed and they're connected. When we read about the family violence, when we read about murders that's based on the addiction of that individual who committed the crime, we do have to meet this head on. But in order to do it, we have to admit it. It's like you have to tear off the Band-Aid and say, look, we have got to get this healed. It's not going to be just about psychology, and again, because this is based on experience, we need to highlight also the role of the churches, the spirituality of the individual. This is not just a medical, psychological problem. It has to be treated holistically. That has worked for my son, because it was like when he was embraced as somebody who needed help, then he knew someone had his back. Even if he stumbled, someone had his back. And that takes a whole bunch of faith, and just knowing that when we can't do anything else, that there's somebody else, there's God who can take care of it. And that has worked for us. Now, we're all talking about policies, but policies is almost just like, you know, it's so objectified. We have to talk about these individuals as human beings who have needs, real needs.
And I think that's one thing that Senator Nelson did very well tonight was she kind of put the problem in perspective. One thing about Senator Talina that, I appreciate is she's very consistent and passionate. I mean, I feel like if she's going to oppose gambling, then she can't necessarily be in favor of growing weed in the backyard. So I think that's why she kind of opposed the homegrown cultivation bills, because maybe she feels like it's a conflict of conscience when she's saying, we've got a drug problem, but okay, this isn't a problem. And I felt like she really spoke from like a personal place tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you recall any of the sitting senators that have actually pushed for, solving the drug problem on Guam? I'm trying to think, is there anyone that stood out for me?
It's real hard. No. Well, I was there too. Well, I was there. I certainly didn't. I just was very busy trying to address at personal level. Mm-hmm. But it's real tough. I just know that what has worked for us, and I believe that it can work for others. It would be the same thing with, at one time we were concerned about teen pregnancies, right? Yeah. And that too can be addressed, when we have a stronger family system. But I believe that our family structure has really broken down. We used to be a very, very close, interconnected, interdependent island, and families took care of each other. And so when I came back from the States and going to school, all of a sudden my friends had apartments, and that was never something that was allowable even, when we were growing up here. So, we have our elders now placed in, because people have to work, right? So there has been a shift in our cultural values.
And we're just dealing with all the
the remnants, and then technology comes in, and we no longer have control over what your kids are learning and being exposed to.
Don't even get us started, Nerissa.
Yeah, but
go down that road, there's no turning back.
Yeah, but that is where, again, for me, we have to just not think about the mental and the emotional. We have to really think about the spiritual development.
And there's got to be, for example, a family member of mine, a struggle with addiction, burglary, robberies, did time, comes out. What happens when they come out? It's hard to find a job,
Exactly.
And then they end up running with the same people, doing the same things.
Yeah, and that's where the support is needed.
Yeah.
It's
really
right. consistent. Even through the stumbling afterwards, it's a lifetime.
Hopefully, if there's bipartisan support on the island for the designation of the Haida, as we see candidates in both parties recognizing the problem.
Yeah.
Even when I dealt with this in 2000 in Puerto Rico, it releases a ton of federal funds, and I'm talking in the millions of dollars. We use money from the Haida funds to $9 million a year in advertisements to get the community to understand the real problems with the addiction that methamphetamine was causing, and cocaine, which is a big issue for the Caribbean. We were able to subsidize. We were able to get the X-ray machine so it could read the containers, so that when the containers landed on the island, they could be scanned automatically.
And now you don't have a drug problem in Puerto Rico.
Oh, you still have a huge drug problem we're fighting, but it's a lot better than it was before, and particularly in providing services for the community, because that's where there's a lot of need. It's not inexpensive, and it's very hard for the state government to carry all that burden on their own.
It's crazy to me how many of these single issue candidates we have running this election, but there's no candidate who's running on a single issue of drug rehab and the drug problem. There's a free idea for you guys out there next election.
Well, speaking of the candidates, we did just release our polls today that we conducted with the University of Guam students. And
you want to start with senatorial?
Yeah.
So Talina is second. You know, she's been polling pretty strong, which I like to see because, you know, she's took some shots and, you know, agree or disagree with her. I feel like she's pretty consistent. You know, I think that she had some growing pains, you know, big shoes to fill. I mean, her grandpa's shoes, former Senator Ted Nelson, that's some, you know, pretty big shoes.
And the committees that she chaired were pretty controversial.
I mean, you had the chief of police trying to boot her off the committee. I mean, you know, it's been a hell of a term for her, and you know, I appreciate that she's doing well. Speaker Terlai continues, you know, her top spot domination. Senator Lee took third. The highest Republican in this poll, Senator Maria Torres. Then Republican Will Castro. They round out the top five. Tied for sixth, we had former Senator Tina Muñoz Barnes, Joe San Augustine, the Democrat. Seventh, Louise Muñoz, incumbent. Eighth, James Moylan. Ninth, Amanda Shelton. 10th, Amanda Blas. Tied for 11th, Clint Rogel, Jermaine Alerta. 12th, Kelly Marsh. 13th, Teletidegui. 14th, Julia Santos. And running out the top 15, Jose Terlahi. Nerissa, I want to ask you, what do you make of those? And there's a lot of room for play on maybe the latter half, but people always talk about, well, what are the people saying? What are the voters trying to say?
I have to chuckle because I went through this. And when I was running for re-election, I was actually right around the middle. And then when it was the exit poll, you know, I think I was like number 5 or number 6, right? And so when the results came in, wow, it was a total shock. I said, where am I? Where am I? As the results started to come in. And it didn't reflect anything like the polls were showing.
Right.
It was number 17 consistently throughout the night. So that's why when we are talking about polls, you know, at the real poll will really occur. I've seen this way too many times.
Right.
And so I would just say, well, that looks good right now, but don't be discouraged and don't be too encouraged.
Right. I think with the senatorial, there's always a lot of room for play, right?
Yeah.
What about Attorney General? I mean, it's been pretty consistent with leaving, you know, polling almost double digit. I mean, 65% of respondents to Doug Moylan's 35%. Juan Carlos?
Yeah, I think he's been consistent. Every single poll you've taken, he's at 65%. He's the only one out of all of them that has not moved up or down at all.
Yeah.
And then you have the congressional race, Michelson Nicholas, 55%, Doris Flores Brooks, 45%.
She's continuing that upward tick.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's because people are, you know, getting turned on to how she's campaigning, or they're just, you know, there's an exodus of San Nicolas support. I don't know.
Well, she asked people for their votes.
Yeah.
She asked me for my vote.
Right. Knowing you're a Democrat, she still asked. Yeah.
And she's been turning it up also on social media.
She has. You know, one thing I mean, she's been going after Mike, not in a dirty way or anything, but just calling him out on some of his issues. There was an ad that I saw popped up on my Instagram where she was saying that, you know, Mike San Nicolas doesn't trust us to vote on self-determination, so how can we trust him? I think it was a valid attack, I guess. And, you know, I had some concerns with her in the primary. She didn't, you know, campaign at all. Maybe she's just turning it up late. What do you think, Mars?
I was honestly surprised by that too, though. I thought it was still going to be the other way around.
You thought Doris was going to be on top?
No, I thought she was going to be trailing further than that, just based on previous polls. Yeah, I mean, I have to agree, though. Like, every time I've seen her, though, she's asked for my vote. But I like her, though, and I think she's, you know, I like both of them, though. But I like Brooks more than Mike, though. I think she comes across as, I think, a little more polished and a little more genuine, and as somebody that if I'm going to have somebody speaking, you know, in the House on behalf of the people of Guam, though, I kind of prefer to have her do it. Based on the experience that I've had with her, and the appearances that I've had before the OPA, she always struck me as knowing all the procedural issues, knowing the law that was in front of her extremely well, even more so than the other attorneys in the case. and she's always struck me as being very knowledgeable in what she does, though, and very professional and everything. So I think the more that she's gotten out, the more people have been able to see that with her too, because we have somebody like her who's been in a position where she's been able to hold herself up like that, though. Then we've got Mike San Nicolas, who is the free cotton candy guy, though. So to me, that's the most recent thing that I've seen of him, though.
But I noticed that we talk about this race, and we talk about Doris, and we don't talk about. I mean, San Nicolas has consistently held. I mean, his lead is dwindling. In the last 3 polls, but why do you think he's leading?
Well, I think at this point it's really about youth, somebody new. They want perhaps it's because he connects with the millennials, and maybe for people they want somebody with youth. I think that's basically, and he has stood very firm during our term. He rode that white horse about the pay raises, right, and getting those reduced.
It's ironic that once we got the pay reduced, he's trying to get a higher paying job in Congress.
Okay, well, are we going to ask him to reduce his pay, right? Yeah, but I think it really is about youth and maturity.
Right.
And if she's gaining, I think people need to, they want to feel confident that the person that we send there would be stable and has had experience in public service. And she's been a senator.
Well, it sounds like we got a Brooks couch over here.
No.
But I attribute part of the lead because all the excitement was in this 4-way race on the Democratic side.
Right.
So
you think it's just washing down now?
So a lot of the attention on the candidates, who they are, what they're doing, what they're standing for, was there. Doris didn't have a vast war chest waiting to spend, so she was very judicious of her spending in the primary process. She didn't have to spend the money then. She waited to use it now, and I think she's getting the message out, and you're starting to see it reflect in the poll. Very stable, down to earth. There's a lot of these politicians, they get in this office and they get what we call a big head, right? And she's not like that at all. She's very humble. She's willing to come to any person and say, look, I would be honored to have your vote. Would you consider it? And it says a lot, and she's willing to listen to what the people stand for. So she's gonna run a great race. I think it's gonna be very tight till the end. I think that one and the gubernatorial polls are going to be very exciting to see.
Yeah.
Okay, so on our gubernatorial poll, we really wanted to kind of give a chance to factor in what impact, if any, the Ogden Limtiaco team would do. But, with these forums, right, you have the system with the primary and obviously a Democrat, Republican winner, and Ogden Limtiaco not really getting recognized as a, legitimate team. So in this poll, we wanted to present the option of a write-in candidate, and the responses: 238 surveyed, Lou and Josh 58%, Tenorio Ada 32%, write-in 10%. And I feel like the Ogden Limtiaco campaign is still picking up speed.
I believe so.
Yeah.
10%, and they had just announced 7 days ago.
And it's about a 6% jump from our last poll.
And so I believe that they can pull this off, that they can be a team that would be on the runoff if no one. With this 3, that I just don't think that anyone's going to have 50%.
Right. Right. Mathematically, it seems like a stretch.
Yeah.
Let's talk about and it wasn't really an announcement. There was a viral meme going around of you on WhatsApp and
on the single issue voter.
Single issue, yeah.
Yeah.
And we wanted. Thank you so much for coming on. We kind of wanted to talk about this issue that has become one of the most important and hot button issues in this campaign is abortion. And you had come out in that meme and said that you'd be supporting Frank Ugg and Alicia Liptiaco because of their stance on abortion, and I feel like you caught a lot of heat for that.
I didn't feel it. If the heat was there, I didn't feel the heat. I was really energized because again, it's based on my own personal experience. I think it's really important for us to protect life, and none of us have the right to terminate life once upon conception. I just believe that belongs to God. It's only God who creates life. And so irrespective of the circumstance by which that child is conceived, that's life. And we need to do everything we can to protect that life as best as we can. And so, if in my own experience, if abortion was in fact something, abortion was, because I was barely in high school when I found out that I was pregnant, and so I was a teenager, and I wasn't married, and I came home to Guam, but I was sent back to the States because there was a lot of stigma. That was about 45 years ago. But I was provided support by the Catholic Social Services, and they also provided spiritual support. And so with that, even though it was very hard and lonely to be in that apartment as an 18-year-old, right, in the city of Seattle, I was able to, take care of my baby and raise him, and eventually, right, enjoy my grandchildren, his children, and enjoy him as well, and his wife. So I'm just not sure that inconvenience should be a reason for us to abort children. I just believe in life, and that's the bottom line for me. Now, Alicia and Frank have been very clear about protecting the unborn, and so that was why I had supported them right away, because I also believe in making sure that with the other issues, the social services are important for us, that government should play a major role in providing support for the population that is struggling, and through that support, then we can give everyone that equal opportunity to succeed, and through the fair treatment, that they can, no matter what their lot in life is, that they can actually succeed and be productive citizens. And that's basically my life story. And so that's why I feel very strongly about that.
Yeah, I know when I called you up and asked you to be a guest, I was like, you're on Facebook Live. I didn't even know you were going to be at the unity. I was like, Nerissa's campaigning?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just, it started out as a prayer, and I said, oh, and by the way, we believe, yes, we believe. Let's make that clear. Yeah, so that was.
Let me ask you this though, because I had heard that there was a little back and forth with you and the party chairman. I don't know if that's true with Senator Lee about this not being a single issue.
No, I sent an email to the Democratic officers and the CEC, and I told them for my reasons that I couldn't vote for Lou and Josh, and I would be supporting Frank and Alicia, and so they responded. They said, "Hey, great, thank you for being honest, and we respect your stance."
Which I feel like they treated you with more respect than they treated Frank and Alicia.
Yeah, but they should treat them with respect as well.
Right. So, and I wanted to bring up the single issue argument. Are there other issues that kind of led you to support Ugg and Liptiaco?
Look, when it comes to campaigns, the candidates all pretty much tell us they care about us. They want to make sure that our children are educated. We want to make sure that we're healthy and we're safe. They're all saying the same thing, but there's this single issue differentiates the candidates from each other. So with Lou and with Frank, if you are for pro-choice and, you know, it reflects your inner values, what has the ultimate authority in your life? For pro-choice, I would assume it's that it's your capacity to think things through and to make choices. You know, that it's you. You have the ultimate authority. For pro-life, the ultimate authority in our life is God. There's somebody higher than us. And so when you apply that, well then when we are in a tight spot, how are you going to solve problems? What if all the reasonings can't work out? What do you do then? So for me, and again, based on the values that I've been raised with, you know, we have to have God in our lives. And that's primarily what had led me to Frank and Alicia, because they've been very clear about their faith. Yeah.
But do you see, and maybe
now with the difference now with Ray and Frank, they both are for pro-life, but here they're all applying for a position, and they're all applying, and the problem, I had thought about Ray and Tony before Frank and Alicia decided to go for the write-in. But the problem with Ray is that he has this legal problem that's hanging over his head. So when you're applying for a job and you have that unresolved issue, well then it's going to create a problem.
So I bet when Frank and Alicia announced, you're probably like, whoo, I don't have to go Republican.
No.
Juan Carlos, how did abortion become such a big issue in this election in 2018?
Because 4 years ago, one of the candidates decided that this issue was so important to her that she needed to go and testify on it. And a testimony that was very strong. So it comes out that in that case, it was not abortion in general. It was not late-term abortion. It was partial abortion birth. That means that the baby is born alive and then it's killed by the doctor. So for pro-life advocates, that's like the worst you can do, you know. And it can be regulated by the states. There was a bill trying to regulate just that here in Guam, and it was so strong for this candidate that it's so hard to hear that same candidate now saying, well, I'm not running on that issue. It is part of who that candidate is, and that's why it's become a big concern.
And that's
the bill that she testified against. It just turns out that it was Frank Ogden's bill.
Frank Ogden's bill.
So it's sort of very interesting. The other candidate that's coming out.
Plot twist.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think, and Mars, maybe I pose this question to you: is why hasn't Lou come out and yelled from the top of the mountain, said, "Yes, damn it, I'm pro-choice. Deal with it."
I have no idea, and far from it for me to speak to her position on the issue, or what her position, or why she's taking along that route, though the position that she has or hasn't. But honestly, regardless of what your position is on this one issue, though, I mean, it's not a single issue election, in my opinion. There's very little that can be done legally in terms of dealing with regulating abortion on Guam, especially given the strictures of Roe v. Wade. I mean, I'd be curious to ask the individual candidates that are making this an issue, that are making abortion an issue, what specifically they plan to do if they are elected. Because, and with all due respect, I mean, I prefer a candidate that's ruled by the law rather than their religious views, because I grew up in a school on Guam where I had friends who were from many different religions, and I would be afraid to impose my religious values on my friends or to have them impose their religious values on me. And to me, that's what the law comes down to, in terms of whether we're going to find some way to deal with each other or work with each other. And I'd be afraid to deal with a situation where where everybody's trying to interpret what God wants us to do, and then that's how we're going to draft our laws. I mean, the thing that kind of worries me is there was a time, I believe, when the Archbishop of Guam was walking into the legislature threatening to excommunicate people if he didn't vote for, if senators didn't vote for certain bills in certain lines. And I really don't want that to be the type of issue that this election is decided upon. We have a lot of other issues that are pressing on this island, and I think the election should be determined by looking at a multitude of issues.
That's why I asked Nerissa, is I feel like, I mean, for you it's a single issue election, but I feel like there are many issues that separate all three of these teams as far as their stances. Like, I feel like just looking at Lou and Josh, looking at Agul and Tiaco, they kind of espouse two different facets of the Democratic Party to me. And then you have the Republicans. So, although I know for you it's a single issue election, I feel like there are different issues.
But it's not a single, it's the issue that has to be addressed because it has to do with life. And so how we treat life, no matter how small or whether it's measurable or not, or at what stage, reflects what our inner values are, which would then dictate how we would solve problems that are the framework that we would be using. Right. So, when we're talking about, we're not just saying, okay, we're pro-life, but that means that we'll be putting a lot of resources into ensuring that we have the public services, that those mothers who are carrying that child, that they are actually provided the medical, the emotional support, and the spiritual support. That's where the partnership with nonprofit organizations really can work to provide that support for the mother. We're not talking about just saying, you can't do this, you can't abort the baby, you can't make a choice. We're saying that choose life, and we'll be here. We're going to make sure that we partner with nonprofit organizations to provide you the support. That has worked for me. That was how I was able to do it as an 18-year-old mother. And to this date, I wouldn't be sitting here. I also have had friends, a couple of friends, who opted for abortion, and it has torn them apart for life. I mean, one of them had ended up being an alcoholic because she couldn't live with that.
Right. Well, so my mom had me when she was 17, so right.
Yeah, so there you go. See, we wouldn't have you here if you chose.
But how much of a factor do you think this issue is going to play into the results?
Guam really inherently has always been a spiritual culture. It really has been. And so I think at the end of the day, that's going to play out.
I just think it's really interesting that they've, Lou has kind of been backed into this corner as, the pro-choice candidate, and she hasn't yet, or maybe I missed it, but passionately defended that stance, because I would like to see, maybe she would bring another side to this argument.
Who would you trust? Somebody who wants to promote life, or somebody who will say, death is an option? And here's what's ironic. Here in Guam, we don't even have capital punishment. Why? Because we believe in life.
And for me, you're absolutely right. It's providing that network and for the mothers, a lot of them single mothers.
Yes, high school.
To be able to go through the entire pregnancy period with the support of the community.
The community and the family.
And always been, for me, the federal government under the Obama administration mandated that all insurance policies had to provide that they would cover 100% of the abortion, but they won't provide the benefits for the mother that decides to keep that child, even if she's going to give it for adoption at the end, which is always an option. So I would hope that whoever becomes governor looks at trying to strengthening that infrastructure and allowing, because I know a lot of young women that have gotten pregnant here, and it's nice to see the network when the family tries to say, you know what, we're going to keep it and we're going to support you so that you can have that child.
One thing I think is very interesting, and not to cheapen the conversation, but I feel like bringing abortion into the discussion has really taken a lot of the focus off of every other issue that's important in this campaign.
But
no, I'm not saying yes, it's very important to you guys, but like Mars said, there are many other issues, and it's been, you know, I feel like it's really benefited Aguilamtiaco and more so Ray Tenorio, because
when leading.
so that's what I'm curious about is like if I know this is a big issue, especially on a Catholic island. Well, why aren't we seeing it yet in the polls? I mean, Lou is still leading, and maybe that's why she hasn't come out and defended it, because maybe she feels like it would hurt her.
Well, you know how I feel about polls. But you know what, Jeff, you know the owner of Amazon? Well, his mother was 17 years old in high school when she had him. And his dad was an immigrant, non-English speaking, from Cuba. But look at where he is now. And he attributed it to the support of their family. His grandparents helped out and just provided him that support, so that now look at where he's at. Amazon, the owner of Amazon.
I said this earlier today to someone, pro-life Democrats, only on Guam.
Yeah, but it's also in the States.
Right, yeah.
Just like looking at each other. I don't know.
Oh, I just haven't heard from him in a while. This one.
No, I mean, look,
We're dominating.
I haven't seen a single bill by anybody that's pushing this life issue that talks about providing this support, though. I'm a very cynical person. I think it's being made. I mean, you see these bills brought up, the last year, people's terms when they're thinking about running for office. Rodriguez, I think, was supporting a similar bill too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my concern is that people are using this to become an election issue because they think they'll get votes off of it. And honestly, I think that's kind of a pretty crude thing to do.
It's fair, though.
Yeah, it's fair. You can, live with your own conscience, I guess. But
let me ask you this, Nerissa. How come you didn't come out earlier in support of Aguilamtiaco?
Because I was supporting Dennis Rodriguez, and he had the same. He also had the same. The same stance regarding life.
Right.
You know, I do want to bring something, because I know you self-admitted cynical, and but when Tony Ada provides a free funeral service for all the aborted embryos, when Frank Ogun presented his bill through time, when different senators have supported and administration supported the Catholic Social Services and the services they provide to this community, I don't see that to be cynical at all. I think that there's a legitimate concern and value of people here. This point of Lou, I think that people were not really aware how strong she felt until this video made it into the internet and people started really paying attention. And then her reaction to it, I think, has also elevated the issue another time, even more. Now, you said there's nothing that can be done.
no, I didn't say that. I did not say that at all. I absolutely did not say that at all. So don't start.
Okay, so when you say
saying that I did that.
So when you so
I said that none of these people that have introduced one of these bills, though, as far as I have seen, have not introduced any bills trying to provide this level of support that the two of you are talking about. Though that is a very different thing from what you just said.
Okay, but the prior time, and please review the record. You mentioned that Roe versus Wade control, and there's nothing they could do. Ogun's bill was allowed by.
I said there was very little that could be done.
Well, Ogun's bill is allowed under Roe versus Wade. Late term abortion can be regulated under Roe versus Wade. So, is there things that can be done? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, you cannot just go in and say we're going to eliminate this and not provide support for the mother,
right.
pregnant mother. So they go together. It is a network
Was that
issue.
introduced as part of that bill then?
But
Was it?
no, it wasn't. But you see, this is not. it's not just the social services and the public services that is needed. We need to build up the families.
And those
as
bills
well.
can be introduced even without the abortion aspect, though, can't they? Even without first passing one of these abortion bills that you were discussing. Those bills to support people that are women that choose life.
These pro-life bills.
Those bills can be introduced, can't they?
Well, they
But
are
have they?
but they are being supported right now by the social services. When I was pregnant, I was on welfare and food stamps, so we support that. We fund those. We partner. We have bills that partner with the nonprofit organizations like Catholic Social Services. So those already exist. What we're saying is those need to be strengthened. And we need to provide more education and make sure that there are alternatives. You know, the reason why it worked for me was that I had a one-to-one social worker who picked me up from my apartment, took me to the doctor, and then was with me. And not the whole time, but was always checking up on me. I don't know if that exists in the same way as it does right here in Guam, but I know that there's a vision that I have that even if we had like homes that would be willing to take in these girls so they can be embraced, they can be provided support. But those are the kinds of things that I'm talking about with Frank and Alicia, that we can somehow strengthen. But they already exist. We're already trying to provide that, even through the school system. So, you know, what we're talking about is really that, you know, we have to go back and each one of us have to think about what our inner values are and what really is important, what has authority in our lives. And it's, to me, no matter what degrees I have, it's not just the intellect that solves my problems.
Well, you know, I really appreciate the passion with which you speak, and you know, also the fact that you've come out and you know you've stood on the record and said, hey, this is what's important to me, and this is why I'm supporting so and so, and just wish you the best luck. Are there other people in the Democratic Party who feel the same way as you?
I haven't talked to them. I'm sure there are. I know I have spoken to candidates who do feel the same, but they're on the other side. So I'm just saying, just pay attention to what your values are.
Right.
When you go into the booth.
And I think that there are other issues. This is the issue, as far as I'm concerned. When Rory asked me, why are you voting for Ray, I said, this was my number one reason, is I'm pro-life. And it's also then you look at that. That's one issue. The other one is the stand on legalized recreational marijuana as our main source for our economic recovery. You know, then looking at the buildup and whether they support or really not support the buildup. And when you add those issues together, you know, it sort of strengthened my decision for who I'm voting for, which I'm sure is the same reason why it strengthens your position for who you're voting for.
Any final comments, Mars?
Mars?
What?
Mic drop?
No. I guess just one last thing though too. I mean, I am cynical, but I guess until I see one of those people who's making this pro-life thing an issue actually show that they've introduced a bill in order to support women who choose life and to provide those types of services, because certain ones do exist, I guess, though, but only in the general sense. Nothing that's actually been introduced specifically to help women who choose life, as far as I have seen on Guam. That I'm still going to be cynical about these people and see that they're just trying to use it as a political tool rather than...
Of course, that doesn't mean it's not a valid issue.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, my personal feelings on abortion is I have my personal feeling that I keep to myself because I'm not a woman, and you know, so it's complicated issue. But I wonder if it's potent enough to make or break this election for some of the people who are running.
We'll see.
We will see, Bree. We sure will.
Well, thank you guys for coming in.
Thank you for inviting us.
Right.
Well, so just a heads up, the great debate is coming up on October 30th.
Yes.
That's next Tuesday. Wow. And we're actually going to be streaming that live and also broadcasting it live on
Right.
KUAM TV 11 with the exclusive broadcast partner.
Yep.
You guys are welcome to join us and be analysts of the
I
great
certainly
debate.
hope that Frank and Alicia will be
Yeah,
on
I was
stage.
just going to bring that up. Funny you should say that. I was able to interview
No,
the organizers, and they said there was some discussion on it, but that at the end of the day, I think they made the decision before the write-in campaign was announced, but that they went with the certified winners. So I'm not sure.
Well, I think that's
that's a
really,
challenge
that's really problematic for University of Guam, because University of Guam's mission is to enlighten, to discover, and to serve. And the University of Guam has been noted to be apolitical.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where you engage in critical inquiry and debate.
Yeah.
And so to exclude them is really a disservice to their mission.
What do you think, Juan? Let me guess, you agree?
No, I really do.
Right.
But for me, what is shocking is when you let one candidate dictate the composition of the debate.
And you're talking
It's
about
problematic.
the Chamber of Commerce.
When a candidate calls the organization and says, if there's going to be 3
If you
candidates and
guys
I'm
let
not
Frank
coming,
debate, I'm out, right?
yeah, that is problematic. And the precedent that's going to be created after this for future elections is concerning to me. It's you're stifling the entire purpose of the debate, which is understanding and knowing the candidates.
Right.
And for a candidate that got over 7,000 votes on
Right,
the
yeah.
primary election, for you to say he's not a legitimate candidate and should not be allowed to stage with
I also
me.
thought it was interesting as
Problematic.
I was interviewing the dean of the School of Business and Public Administration and the building that Lou's father donated
Right.
money for to build. I couldn't
That's
help
right.
but okay, so
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's
But,
not connected.
but to me,
but
it's
I
really
agree.
immature.
Yeah, I agree.
Immature to say, you know, it's like my daughter-in-laws would be saying, I'm not going to your party if she's going to be there.
Yeah.
And if they're really
He's gonna be there. Oh, I'm not going.
and if they're really leading by the percentage that
What's the
polls are
problem?
saying, what's the problem of allow that freedom of expression?
Do you think that he should be allowed?
I actually, surprisingly, I have a different opinion from the
Right.
other two. But no, I think, but for a similar reason though, I think it sets a bad precedent to allow somebody who loses a primary election to just be able to continue and debate as if this never happened though, and as if they had simply won some other party's primary election though. Because
They
what do
have
we do
been
in-
recognized by the GEC.
What do we do in years afterwards, though? I mean, do we allow anybody who's lost the primary and doesn't feel like they should have lost to participate in every?
I feel
Debate
yeah.
going
I mean,
forward
if
to
you
the
want
general
to,
Right in.
Aguilam Tiaco, they're not doing anything illegal. They're well within their rights to run a write-in campaign. I feel like UOG should recognize
I feel that
them
too.
as a third
Right.
team.
But GEC has recognized them. GEC has and why do we have write-in
Why do we have
ballots
primaries
in the
then,
first
though?
place? Well, because we want to choose among the candidates. But why do we have write-in? Why do we have that?
Yeah.
And
They're
why
well
did
within their rights
GEC
to-
then
yeah.
come and provide the guidelines for what would be acceptable? They're recognized.
I rarely quote Republicans, but I got a quote. I don't know which one of you guys said the more democracy, the merrier. I think it might have been Jerry Crisosimo. But
Yeah, it wasn't me.
And I know you guys have your own motives for agreeing with that. But
No, but it's interesting to hear the people argue against allowing it, and particularly bringing up the issue of the primaries, because isn't there been a movement to try to separate the primaries from the GEC, and it doesn't change the fact that if the GEC recognizes you as a viable team and you comply with the requirements of the law, whether or not you win the primaries should not affect that recognition, because the primaries are not supposed to be part of the GEC. All they're doing is running it for the parties. And we fight all the time whether they should do it or not.
I just feel like it's, Frank Ogden and Lisa Tiaco, they're the donkeys in the room, and I mean, I feel like you would have to recognize them. And I'd make for a much more interesting debate. I mean, woo,
That's true.
Yeah, I think so.
wouldn't that be crazy?
You
The
know
more
what
the
the,
merrier.
Right?
you know the
Unfortunately,
question.
that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
So.
it's not, yeah.
You know, the question that for me is interesting is it's every election since I've been here is getting closer and closer and tighter and tighter. And I'm intrigued if at some point soon they might try to say, hey, plurality vote is enough for electing governors, and we should really rethink that 50+1.
Well, there goes the whole runoff strategy.
You really think we're going to see a runoff?
I do.
I hope.
I do.
I do. I think we're going to see a runoff. I think we're going to see some litigation. I think we're going to have it all. We're going to have it all this election. Hey, but we're like way over our time. Thank you guys so much. Remember, we got a lot of great content with KUAM News, D18. This has been the after party. For my partner Sabrina, my name is Chris. Hasta adios.
Yes.